Thanks for coming to this Magnolia 5.5.1 walkthrough. This is the first maintenance release after 5.5, and in this release we fix 97 issues, but also deliver some really nice improvements for authors. So let's look at the agenda. Today we're going to show the following things for authors: thumbnail and preview for asset choosing, modern tablet and phone previews, copy and pasting of components across from pages. No more subsegments are allowed. Now you can drag and drop pages to the root level. We implement strict language validation in content apps. We only show the sorting icons if sorting actually works in that app view. And get time zone from a user preference or default to the system server time. And for developers, we have changes. Symbolic links now work in light module directories. There's a new function library called resfn for resources. We fixed a whole bunch of problems in the definitions app, and finally made a fix in the text field so that it doesn't round up long input values. I'm going to start with the author improvements. And the first one is the thumbnail and preview for asset choosing. So here I am in Magnolia. I'll open the Pages app and go to a component that has an image. Open that company page, and here we have a text and image component roughly in the middle. Now when I go to choose an image for this component, this is the asset chooser dialog. Here you typically would see a list of assets, and it would be hard to figure out based on the name only which one do I want. So these little thumbnails here are now new. So you'll immediately get an idea of that's the image I want, or that certainly isn't. And once you've selected one, we show a preview on the taskbar on the right. So this improvement comes as a feedback for clients who have asked, please make the asset choosing more comfortable. It's not clear from the name only, and sometimes the names can be very similar. Now the 5.5.1 release also delivers another change to how browser caching works. We added a never browser caching policy to make changes to images reflect faster on the author side. If you notice that these little thumbnails don't perform well enough for you, then delete that never policy. In the next maintenance release, we'll do a little bit more specific policy for that browser caching. So if you notice that the performance isn't what you were looking for, just delete that node. Check out the release notes which node to delete. And next we go to the tablet and phone previews. So let's look at the home page in preview mode. Here's the travel home. I'm going to preview the page. And here in the device preview dropdown, we have now new options: tablet landscape, portrait, smartphone, and so on. And what we've removed is the device Chrome, which looked outdated. It looked like an old device, an iPhone 3 and so on. So this now looks modern, and it's also future-proof. It will demo better. You don't see an old-fashioned phone there. It also scrolls to the bottom of the page, and you can see the resolution displayed at the bottom in the status bar. So the business benefit of this is that when you're doing demos of Magnolia, it looks better and it looks modern. Then in the last big release, we allowed you to copy-paste components from one area to another. But one leftover that we didn't deliver was copying components from one page to another, and that is also now possible. So let's open a page here, and I'm gonna grab that video component there, copy it, go to another page, and paste it in the main area there. There we go. The benefit of this is that it saves time. When you want to start from a component that is similar to another one, then just copy it. You don't have to start from scratch. Next change is in the segmentation app. We have this app that allows you to segment your audience for personalization. The app is here in the target group. And this is a small change, but it's something that has to do with how users perceive these segments being applied. And I'm going to go back to my slides here to show the example of what has exactly changed. What you used to be able to do is you could organize segments into so-called subsegments, one after another. So United States and new visitor and registered user under it, for example. A geo segment and the type of visitor. This is no longer allowed because this is not how Magnolia applies segments. So here, for example, registered user doesn't mean a registered user from United States. It means just registered user. We don't apply segments in a hierarchical fashion. So we took away the ability to organize things this way so that it wouldn't confuse the user. You can still organize as a flat list, or you can use the folders to organize your segments. But this particular hierarchy is no longer possible. Then a change to how drag and drop works. This is kind of obvious, that should have worked all along, but now you can drag pages onto the root level on the site. So I'm going to create a new page here. Test using a travel home template. And I can grab this page and drag it to the root level in the app, or to another level. It's kind of duh, should have worked all along, but now it really does. A change that has to do with languages. Now we strictly validate mandatory fields also in other languages. So let's open the tours app and look at one of the tours. I'll open this Vietnam tour here. There was an issue in the system where this field, the name of the tour is clearly mandatory. I have to fill it in before I can save the form. But I was able to get around that restriction by going to another language and saving it there. So now what we do is we validate that the mandatory fields have to be filled in across all languages before you can save the dialog. Now if I try to say an empty field here, it says no. And I can't even go back to English until I fill this in. And there's a little drop tooltip here that says content must be valid before you switch language. This again based on user feedback that it's too easy to miss out mandatory content by using this little trick, and no longer isn't. Another UX improvement is for the sorting indicators. Here we are in the tree view in the Tours app. And at the top of the column, I don't see the little arrows that show sort the column this way or that way, because sorting is not possible in this view. But sorting is possible in the list view. And here the indicators are shown on hover. Again, a minor change, but reduces frustration when you click something and nothing happens. You think, is it broken? No, that indicator shouldn't be there at all. And lastly, for authors, a time zone setting. Since Magnolia 5.4.7, we had this mechanism that we would try to detect the time zone from the user's browser and calculate the offset to the server time. And there were some corner cases. Twice a year we go over the so-called daylight savings time. And if you, for example, scheduled a publication to occur after the daylight savings time switchover, you were 1 hour off. Clients pointed this out to us, thank you for that. And we've now changed the mechanism so that we observe the user's preference for the time zone, which is here in the user profile. Here in preferences, you can set your preferred time zone, or we default to the server time, wherever the server happens to reside. So we don't try to detect from the browser anymore, which isn't a reliable source for time zone. And that was all the author improvements. I'll hand over to Topher for developer items.
Yeah, so we've got a few very nice improvements for developers in this release, both for doing light development and Maven development. So the first thing is specifically for light development, and it basically it gives you more freedom about how you organize your projects. And the main improvement is really, you can imagine you might have a module that delivers a certain component, and you want to use that module in many different projects. But with light development, typically you would you would need to copy that project into your light modules directory in each of your projects, and then you're going to have a bunch of copies of this same component. So ideally, you would just like to have that component live in one place where you're working on it and use it in any of your different projects. And that's what this first improvement addresses, and it's the ability to use what are called symbolic links in your light module directory. So let's just take a look at that. So basically, this. So here's like my typical Magnolia project set up with the CLI. I have my Tomcat server, and I have my light modules directory. And in the light modules directory, I have my light module that I'm using for my project. It's just called my project. And but now I want to use something that's stored somewhere else on the server or on my computer. And it's kind of an artificial case. I just created it right here next door, but it could be anywhere on the system. And so here I have this language switcher component, and I might have a bunch of different components that I'm working on, and they're all in this shared modules directory. And now what I can do is I can create a symbolic link, and I've already done that here. And so this language switcher component is linked from the light modules directory, and even OSX shows the little arrow that indicates that it's really just an alias. It doesn't exist here. This is just pointing to this other location. So let's confirm that this actually works. Let's go to Pages app. And I'll create a new page for this. I've already created a page, my page, and I'll just call it test. Okay, here's my empty page, and so let's add this component, and it's this language switcher component that I've added, so we can see that it's available. And I get one choice when I add the switcher, and this is important because I'll change this, and you can see that it really takes the change. So I can choose the type of switcher, but it's not required. Okay, so now I have this little language switcher component. That's handy. So now let's just confirm that the system is observing changes, which is what's so nice about light development with Magnolia. So let's go into my editor, and I go into my shared modules, and let's just open up the dialog actually. So here's the dialog that gives me that preference, and I'll make that very simple change, required true. And now let's open up that dialog, and you see the star. I need to choose something here. It's an artificial example, but just shows that any changes I make are picked up right away, even if it's with a symbolic link. Okay, let's look at, so we have this language switcher, but we don't have any content here. Let's look at it with some content as a part of the next example. So here I have a page. It has some English and German content. I'll just add another component, just the language switcher. I'll put it at the top. Cool. Okay, and just to see this page more easily, I'm going to open it up, how it really looks on the site. So now I have this language switcher, and it lets me switch between the languages. But this page doesn't look all that fancy. It would be nice if it had some CSS, and that brings us to the next new feature, which is it's a new templating function called resfn. So it deals with resources, and it makes it very easy to include CSS and JavaScript resources in your project. So how does that work? Let's go back to the code, and let's take a look at this page. So that is in my project. Templates, pages, here's my page. This is another thing that's nice about the resfn is when you use the CLI to create a page, it already gives you some tips on how to move forwards, and it also gives you an example of how to use resfn, and that's down here. And it's commented out because it doesn't know if we want to use it yet, but let's go ahead and use it. So I will just uncomment this, and let me make it a little bigger. Basically, all it does is let you define a path using what's called a regular expression, which means it's very versatile. You can leave blanks, and then it will fill in the blanks for you, and it will basically find, it's like a searching pattern in a way. It's going to find all the resources that are in your resource directory. So by default, like the simplest thing we could do is just say, hey, any CSS that's in this module, I want to include it. And of course, the old way, and which you can still do, is you can include line by line every single resource that's in your light module, but wouldn't it be nice if they were all included automatically? So that's the pattern that comes by default with the CLI. So you can see it's just going to provide everything that's in my project, which is the current module, and then we have this dot star, which is going to fill in any pattern. So any CSS files in the project will be included. So let's save it and confirm that that actually makes a change. Wow, now we've got cursive and everything's bigger. And now the other thing we can do, I mean, there's a lot you can do. It's very powerful because it's based on this regular expression. So one thing that's super handy is, what if you just want to include all the CSS files from any light module that's present? So anytime you add a new light module, as long as it has the resources in the right place, they'll be added. So that's just a different expression that instead of looking at my project, it also has that dot star in the beginning. So it's going to find, the expression is going to match any light module that I have. And again, even if it's by that symbolic link that we used for the language switcher. So let's try that. And here you can see that the language switcher, it's a list. It's not probably how I would want to work with my language switcher, but it came with some nice CSS. And so now I have much more of a format that I would want because the language switcher resources are included. And I'll just view the source quick. And we can see that it found basically all these links are what's created by the resfn. So anyone that it found, it created a proper link for CSS. A few other features, I can do the same thing with JavaScript, and that's also included by the CLI by default. So I can include all the JavaScripts at the bottom of my page. The patterns I'm using here are very much very lenient. Just bring everything in. I might want to have some more control, and I can do that too. Instead of specifying one pattern, I can specify a list of patterns, and that would let me like order the CSS if I wanted to in particular. There's also other functions about providing a caching fingerprint. Just check out the documentation for all the details on the resfn. Yeah, then another a major improvement in 5.5, you will remember we launched the Definitions app. And the Definitions app gives you this wonderful overview over your whole system, no matter where the definition came from. You can filter and sort on things, and you can even see all the problems that exist with definitions. But the interesting thing with creating this new tool, which gives such an overview on the system, is we discovered many problems in Magnolia's own existing definitions. I mean, they weren't problems that were breaking things, but they were just leftover fields that had never been removed, that weren't doing anything anymore. And so if you went to the problems view, it was hard to see problems in your own project. But now, okay, it's not so impressive to see an empty list, But this means that if you're using 551, you might discover some problems that existed in your existing project, and certainly for any new projects, any problems will show up right away. And let's just demonstrate that. So back to the language switcher, let's just add some kind of property that doesn't really mean anything. Upside down, true. That won't break the dialogue, but it would catch a typo also if instead of form you typed forn, or I don't know. So now if I look in problems, now it tells me, you've got a problem with that language switcher, property upside down, not found in class. Nothing's being done with it. So it's very helpful validation when you're working on projects. Yeah, so that's what I wanted to demo. Maybe one last little improvement in 551. This was something that came in on the forum. Somebody was having trouble with a number value that they had in a dialog. So they were working with GPS coordinates. So they had these very long numbers, and they needed to be that long. But by default, Magnolia is rounding the values to only 3 decimal points, because who would want more than 3 decimal points? That's enough, right? And there was quite a discussion then on the forum, some helpful suggestions. Oh, you could just store it as a text field. No, I really want it as a number value because I want to be making comparisons. Some other ideas. And then a Magnolian just realized, yeah, okay, this is a problem. Let's get this fixed. And in 551, it's fixed. So now if you have long GPS coordinates, you have a double field, those are going to work fine. Yeah, so that's what we had for you. That's 551. Thanks a lot.